All right, okay, so what we're going to do, what I wanted us to do was to think about, and throughout this time together, to think about how we understand these women and their roles. We see them as quite different. We see them as opposite sides, perhaps, but I want to show through some pieces of art how they might in fact be more similar than we could imagine. If I could have one volunteer on each side. Great, thank you.
Do you think maybe a little share?
Yeah, I mean, I printed 85. So as you get these packets, I want us to take a look at this first on page 2. Page 2. It is 2 color paintings. They look a bit yellow. For those of you joining on the live stream, hello, good to be with you. And I want you to answer the following question. Which of these women is Vashti, and which of these women is Esther? And why? Okay, why do you say of course? All right. Hold on, we'll hold your thought. We'll wait till pretty much everybody. Once you've got, take a look at page 2 and consider which of these women is Vashti and which is Esther and why. Yes, first Miriam. Okay, so looking at body language and what we can see of age, Miriam says she thinks that the painting on the left, based on the body language, the protective arms crossed over the chest, is Esther, and the person on the right, who looks maybe a little older, a little more resigned, is Vashti. Other thoughts? Yes, I said, Larry, did you have a Ruth? Something similar. Okay, maybe from this side, yes. Okay. Okay, so Graham was saying that on the left, this body language could be a reluctance to do what she's been asked to do, and on the right, looks like a veil possibly for a wedding. Other thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I think that Esther is on the right. She just, I don't know why I get this impression that she kind of can't believe that she is the queen and, maybe self-conscious, shoulders are slumped. And then Vashti's kind of this more defiant, kind of more straight posture.
Okay, so looking at body language all different kinds of ways, defiance versus astonishment or disbelief. Yeah. Beautiful. All right, a couple more comments. Yes. Terrific. So taking a closer look at the painting on the left, we can see a whole series of figures, some on the right who seem to be pleading with her, and someone also, I don't know if you saw this, all the way in the background, who looks like they're leaving the room with their hands thrown up, possibly in disgust or they're fed up. They say that's it. And on the right, it seems like a more private space, and it could be Esther. All right. So keep all of these pieces in mind. I want us to look at the next set of paintings. So this first set of paintings was done by a British painter, Edwin Long. Most of these paintings are coming from the 19th century, just as context and background. So here we see 2 women who look perhaps certainly pale and wan. or wan, and a little bit unhappy to be there. And in this second set of engravings, done by Gustave Doré, who's a French engraver, very famous illustrator, we see two very different women. What do we see here? Yes, Ruth. So either one of these women could be Vashti, you think, because it's a strong pose, she's pointing, she seems to be in control. To you, neither one says, I'm Esther. Great. Yes, Fern. Okay, why do you say that? Say the right one is definitely Esther, very confident. Okay. Wow, okay. So in the painting on the right, you think that's Esther, definitely Esther, because she's pointing at Haman. Everyone can say boo. And is saying he's the one who made this plot. Whereas on the left-hand side, Vashti is saying, perhaps it's Vashti saying, no, I'm not going to do this. There's lots of people around, and she's clearly leaving. To you, that's how it looks. Terrific. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Oh, so maybe on the left could be, either one of these could be Esther, you're saying, because of the protective stance in certainly the one on the left, or also in both of them. Terrific. All right, any thoughts before we continue on to our next set? All right. Final set, two different painters, Cabanel and Rembrandt. What are your thoughts here? Don't hold back. Yes. Okay. So we have one vote for the scepter, which seems to be in the person's hand on the left, versus the scroll in the person's hand on the right. So you think that means that Vashti is holding the scepter and Esther is holding a scroll. Okay. Other thoughts? Yes. Right, so the different meanings and understandings of what each of these objects, the scepter or the scroll, could possibly mean for each of the people in the paintings. Definitely, different parts of the story, different possible meanings for the individuals and for the parties that they're around. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that Rachel was saying that she doesn't know who is who in each picture, but none of them look happy, and all of them look like there's a lot going on in their minds, and they've been through a lot. They could each be in any position, and you just want to go and give them a hug. Yes, I would agree. Yes. You think they're both Esther? Say more. Why? You think no one's painting Vashti. Why would no one paint Vashti? Okay. Right. You're saying that thinking about the painters and the context in which each of these artists is painting, you're thinking that they're looking for, maybe the words I might use are virtuous biblical figures to be displayed for people to follow that model, and why would they be painting someone who might not fall into that category? Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow. I did not see that at all. That's very cool. So there might be some Hebrew letters in the painting on her dress or on the scepter, which might give some clue. Last comment before I spoil and let you know I share the secret who's who. So in each of these paintings, the woman on the left is Vashti, and the woman on the right is Esther, which was surprising to me when I was putting this together. And the reason that I made these pairings was because when I was growing up, when each of these figures was described to me, and maybe this is my own childlike remembering, I remember learning that Vashti was old, and Vashti was not desirable, and Vashti was like a little bit annoying, and Vashti was sassy, and Esther was young, and she was beautiful, and she was thoughtful, and she was quiet, and she did what she was supposed to do. That was in my mind, and I was expecting you all, but you were all very nuanced and thoughtful, and none of you said any of those things, which is wonderful. I'm glad that we're all evolved to that point as a Jewish people. Maybe some of you are thinking what I was thinking, but what I wanted to show with each of these paintings is that these women, these figures, are so complex, exactly as you were saying, Rachel. When we look at their faces, we can give a great deal of credit to these artists, these painters. There's so much going on in their minds, and if we put ourselves in their shoes, I think as we become adults or we continue on in our learning, we understand that these are complicated figures. These are complicated women, these are complicated people, and the choices that they made in the stories that we read were hard to make. And that we can just as easily categorize Vashti here as timid or meek because of her body language, or resigned, that Gustave Doré is imagining each of these women as strong. Their shoulders are back. They are not afraid. They are standing up for themselves, for their people. They are using their outstretched hands to do justice as they see it. And to see that each of these women is complicated in their own right. And the cheat sheet is on the back with a little bit more information also about each of the artists. And a little bit more information about the paintings. If you want to look up more information about the paintings, you certainly can. I brought in this midrash, and we'll close here with this midrash from Esther Rabbah, which brings in this verse from the book of Esther. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor and grace in his eyes more than all the virgins. He set the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. And we'll continue. He placed the royal crown on her head, and he made her queen in place of Vashti. Until they made Esther queen, the portrait of Vashti was still extant, was still up there on the wall, I imagine. Once he married Esther, well-born and of noble descent, he said, "Take down Vashti and hang up Esther. That is what is written," and made her queen in place of Vashti. So the way that each of these women is used or attempt to be used as a kind of pawn, and the subversive way that they each in their own way try to not be used really struck me. And I hope that it strikes you as well, and that you learned from each of these wonderful paintings. Thank you all so much for participating, for learning, and we'll get started in just a few minutes with the installation ceremony.
It is my great privilege, my pleasure to welcome you here for our perhaps overdue installation of Rabbi Dalton. I think this moment marks a lot of things. The fact that we're able to do an installation, the fact that you are able to be here marks that it is springing in many ways, perhaps a winding down of the COVID pandemic. Perhaps you have all now had the opportunity to learn from Rabbi Dalton, to perhaps be cared for by Rabbi Dalton, to experience her wisdom, to experience her strength. Nobody is happier today, I think, maybe, than me. Rabbi Dalton first came to this room, as far as I know, it was the first time anyway, on March 7th, 2020, well, March 6th, Friday night. But we're going to go with March 7th because that's my birthday. And what a birthday present it turned out to be. And what a moment in all of our lives it turned out to be. You know, I want to mention two things by way of introduction, and then we'll move into the ritual itself. The first is that unlike the women in these pictures, very interesting, by the way, thank you. Unlike the women in these pictures, an installation is not a coronation, right? So we're not doing a coronation for rabbi here, because that's not how rabbis get made, right? So installation is a funny word, and it's hard to know what it means. Just wanted to mention, despite the fact that we have had the privilege of learning with and learning from and being ministered to and cared for by Rabbi Dalton for a year and a half now, this moment, so in other words, she's been our rabbi, but this moment is ritual. In Judaism, in most religions, we do ritual to name something different than that which is physical, to name something that is spiritual. And it was very important to me, it was very important to a lot of the lay leadership of this congregation that we have an installation, that we mark spiritually what it means for a congregation to adopt a rabbi, to say, we want to learn from you, to say, we want you to guide us. And that is what we're naming in this moment spiritually. And it is such an important ceremony. It is such a privilege for us to be here together to celebrate the binding of a rabbi and a congregation. It's not a coronation. I also want to mention that I've been thinking, some of you know that yesterday all across the country was Refugee Shabbat, sponsored by HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. And we celebrated that here, and so refugees were on my mind. And in that moment, March 7th, 2020, little did we know it, although we're starting to get a weird inkling that there was a weird weekend, not nearly as strange as the weekends that would follow. We've all been a little bit refugees in our own homes, refugees in our own synagogues. And in some ways, Rabbi Dalton came here as a refugee after being stuck in her apartment for many months, after doing school virtually to finish out her rabbinic education. And I hope we tried really, really hard to be a refuge for you when you came here. But what was unexpected, at least for me, and I think maybe for many members of this congregation, you became a refuge for us. You came here, and your guidance and your wisdom and your strength and your grit starting as a rabbi under circumstances like none of us could even have imagined, no less have experienced. You became a model for us of how to move forward, of how to get through, certainly for me, and I know for others because we've spoken about it. We are instructed by the Torah to walk in God's ways. And God has a lot of manifestations. And one of them is hamakom, is the place, the refuge, the place where we can go and find solace. And of all the things that you have given us, that you have given me, Rabbi Dalton, that I am grateful for, perhaps the most is being that model of hamakom, and it certainly helped me and inspired me to be that for the congregation as well. And I want to thank you for that. And I know we all are grateful for that. We're going to open our ceremony with Havdalah, which may seem a little awkward. It's Sunday. We do Havdalah on Saturday night, but we're actually allowed to do Havdalah all until the middle of the week. So Rabbi Dalton chose this as a centerpiece of our ceremony, and I think it is fitting and it is beautiful. She's going to come up in 30 seconds and sort of frame the Havdalah ceremony for us. But I'm going to take these 30 seconds and frame it also. One of the things that is beautiful about Havdalah is the braided candle, as it represents our spirit, our souls coming together in one. But maybe today it also represents, for me, for us, all the different ways that the attributes of a rabbi come together in Rabbi Dalton, that we've been able to experience: her Torah, her wisdom, her fortitude and grit, her ability to both be vulnerable and also strong at the same time, her amazing spirit, which we have all been able to experience, all of that braided together like the Havdalah candle, creating such a strong light that has guided us for the year and a half that she's been our rabbi, and that we look forward to guiding us into the future. So with that, I will invite Rabbi Dalton to come up and frame the Havdalah ceremony for us.
So I went for a run this morning, and as I was running, I was reminded of a teaching of a teacher of mine, Rav James. He's a meditation teacher. I learned from him at Kibbutz Hanaton in Israel. Maybe others of you have as well. And he used to say, as a meditation practice, we ought to meditate for 30 minutes a day. And if you don't have time, you should meditate for an hour. I have never been able to meditate for an hour a day, and we don't have that time this afternoon. But I wanted to get at a key part of what it is that he taught me with that teaching, which is that we rush from moment to moment. We rush from day to day, from thing to thing. We try to move as quickly as possible from discomfort to something comfortable. As the world has begun to open up, as we've been able to see more and do more and be more active, we have begun to grab at whatever we want and whatever we are seeing, not knowing when we'll have the opportunity to do so again for a long time, with fear that the door will shut again very quickly. It is a primal urge, it is urgent, and it is stressful. And so what I think Judaism calls us to do is to reject that impulse, to mark time, as Rabbi Arnowitz mentioned, to make a big flame and to build shadows for God to move in, to observe where we are, where we've come from, and where we're going. And so I want to offer a short midrash, a paraphrase of a midrash, and then a kavanah, an intention for us as we go into the Havdalah service. It's from chapter 20 of Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. It is, Rabbi Yehuda begins and says, "The Holy One, blessed be God, kept Shabbat first in heaven, and Adam HaRishon, the first human being, kept Shabbat down on earth. And Shabbat protected him from all evil and comforted him on account of all of the doubts in his heart, all of the fears in his heart. As it is said, In the multitude of my doubts within me, thy comforts delight my soul. And he uses Shabbat as a shelter. But what happens? Shabbat starts to come to an end. Twilight is coming. The sun is coming down. And Adam HaRishon, the first human being, was meditating in his heart and said, maybe the serpent which deceived me will come in the evening once the protection of Shabbat is gone, and he will bite me in my heel. And maybe I will no longer have protection from the things that I did wrong. And so God sends him a pillar of fire to give him illumination and to guard him from all evil. And he sees this pillar of fire and he rejoices in his heart and he puts up his hands and he says, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the flames of fire. And he removed his hands from the light and he said, now I know that this holy day has been separated from the workday, for fire cannot be kindled on Shabbat. And he says, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who divides the holy from the profane, the light from the darkness. And so what I'd like to invite us to do is to think about all of our own anxieties. Might be easier for some of us. I can easily think, what am I feeling anxious about? Think about our anxieties. Think about what protects us from those anxieties. What do we need to be afraid of? What do we not need to be afraid of? What can we let in? What light can we use? What light can we bring in from the people in our lives right now? From the learning that we've done? What light can we let in to help bring a little bit more of that hope and comfort into this room and into the world? And I'd like to invite you now to join me in singing. The musical people in the room, hopefully you can help me out here. You can start with a hum.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen Yai rai ya ra 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 rai rai yai rai ya ra 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 rai rai ya ra ra rai 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 ra ra rai ya ra ra rai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim Rai rai ya ra 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 rai 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 ya ra 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 rai rai ya ra ra rai 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 ya ra rai ya ra ra rai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh borei meorei ha'esh Rai rai ya ra 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 rai 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 ya ra 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 rai rai ya ra ra rai 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 ya ra rai ya ra ra rai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil bein kodesh lechol בין אור לחושך. בין ישראל לעמים, בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני, המבדיל בין קודש לחול.
Shavua Tov. And if the sun is shining, or it was definitely for at least 10 or 15 minutes there, and it's warm, and it does feel like it's going to be a beautiful week ahead. It is now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Rachel Isaacs. Rachel Isaacs is the executive director of the Center for Small Town Jewish Life at Colby College, the spiritual leader of Beth Israel Congregation in Waterville, Maine. She was ordained in 2011 by the Jewish Theological Seminary, where she studied as a Wexner Graduate Fellow and is a graduate of Wellesley College. I know well that there is nothing quite as formidable as a Wellesley woman, except I am learning perhaps a Bryn Mawr woman. Isaacs is also the inaugural holder of the Dorothy Bibi Levine Alfond Chair in Jewish Studies at Colby. 2016, she delivered the final Hanukkah benediction of the Obama administration at the White House. She lives in Waterville with her wife, Melanie Weiss, and their daughters, Nitzan and Hadass. And I might just add, on a personal note, how lovely it is to meet you. Rabbi Dalton speaks about you all the time, and I know what an important friend and mentor you are to her, and how much it means to her and to all of us that you're here to install her today. So please.
Rabbi Dalton. There are few things that bring more kavod to a rabbi than seeing one of her students take on the mantle of Torah leadership. Kavod is the Hebrew word for honor or dignity, but interestingly enough, it is related to the word kaved, or heavy. Kavod is weighty. It means that people weigh what you say, and that there is a certain heft to your persona. As rabbis, our kavod, our dignity, our weight, our honor, is directly related to our place in the chain of tradition. When our mentors lay hands upon us to bestow blessing and authority, we are filled with their respect and trust in our ability to exercise leadership among the people Israel. When our students take up the mantle of leadership, I think the kavod, the weight and honor is even greater. Knowing that the Torah you have taught is resilient and inspirational enough to inspire another generation to take on a life of service to the Jewish people and the world. In Parshat Tetzaveh, which we read a couple of weeks ago, we learn in Exodus 28:2, V'asita bigdei kodesh V'aharon achicha lechavod ultifaret. Make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and splendor. Moses is commanded to make special clothes for his brother Aaron, lechavod ultifaret, for dignity and for splendor. What made Aaron's clothing so special was not just that it shined and was made from fine, expensive materials. It was that these clothes were designed for a certain kind of relationship with the people he was charged with leading. Over his heart, he would wear a breastplate with the names of each one of the tribes of Israel, and each of their names was engraved on a precious luminescent stone. I believe that this breastplate served three roles simultaneously: as a reminder, a shield, and an inspiration. This breastplate was a reminder that the heart of leadership is carrying those you serve close to your heart. The work of a Jewish leader involves the mind, but it is not exclusively about the life of the mind. The beauty of Jewish civilization is how different components of our tradition touch every element of who we are: the body, the soul, and the intellect. In order to bring all of the gifts of our tradition to bear on those we serve, we need to be guided by the heart, by Ahavat Yisrael, a deep love of our family that can withstand the trials and tribulations of human leadership, and the overly critical voices in our heads that can cause us to lose heart and lose our way. The breastplate was also a shield. Even though we are loath to admit it publicly, rabbinic leadership is extraordinarily difficult. Even when you leave nothing out on the field, or on the bima as it may be, no matter how much time, effort, and vulnerability you bring to your work, there will always be critique and pushback. For every 99 voices of gratitude, there will be one that will say, "You're not actually as good as you think you are." I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe no other rabbi goes through that. And you, as a human, will be inclined to listen to the one more than the 99. The rabbis that can navigate this pressure effectively are the ones who, at least in part, and this I learned from my mentor, Rabbi Billy Bow at JTS, the ones who can withstand it all are the ones who come back to the familial commitment, the religious commitment to familial love. The very essence of Aaron's mantle of leadership was a physical reflection of the best of every tribe he served. Even when he couldn't muster to see the best in his Knesset Yisrael, the gathering of Jews before him, he could look down at his heart and see them shine, and be reminded that it wasn't his job to affirm every element and behavior of the Jewish people, but rather to remind them of the best of who they were and could be. And finally, the breastplate was an inspiration. The Italian commentator Sforno writes this about Tiferet, splendor. Also, the priest should inspire awe among the Israelites, who are all considered his disciples, seeing he had the names of all the tribes engraved on these garments, right opposite his heart, when he wore them in his official capacity. When those you lead see you carry them in your heart in the service of God, they are inspired, I hope, to shine themselves. We don't live in a world where it is popular or profitable to show people the best of who they are, where they come from, and who they can be. Despair is simultaneously cheaper and more profitable than dignity. But when you as a rabbi teach your community how precious they are as inheritors of this ancient, durable, beautiful tradition, when you show them how precious they are as potential agents of change, justice, and kindness, when you show them how valuable they are simply as people created in the divine image, you bring them dignity, splendor, and the kind of awe necessary to inspire another generation of students, teachers, leaders, priests, and prophets. Rabbi Dalton, or for this moment, Cornelia, you are a gifted and inspired teacher of Torah, and I hope you revel in this moment of kavod and tiferet, of respect and beauty. I take heart that you are taking up the mantle of this work and laboring daily in the service of the Jewish people, our God, and our Torah. May you wear the vestments of leadership proudly and with true love. May this moment reflect the sacred relationship of deep, mutual, awesome respect you have with this community. May the light that your congregants shine when they are embodying their most authentic and sacred selves show you the way. May this light show you the way to understanding God's will for you in this one precious life. Mazel tov and b'hatzlacha. It is now my privilege to convene a Beit Din, a house of justice and judgment, to mark this occasion. Through the blessings of colleagues and friends, you will be empowered to lead this congregation with grace and wisdom. In weighing your unique and profound gifts against the demands of our vocation, they will bestow blessing, authority, and power for you to serve as a halachic decisor and guide in this holy community. Rabbi Arnovitz.
It's my privilege now to invite the members of the Beit Din who will declare the sacredness of this moment. I say when three rabbis gather, the Shekhinah, God's presence, can be felt with them. I certainly feel that spirit tonight. So I want to thank and welcome members of our rabbinic and chazanut community who have been here, who've come to mark the moment with us, who are not on the bima. But I'd like to now invite the members of the Beit Din, Rabbi Dalton's friends and classmates from JTS, Rabbi Jessica Fisher, Rabbi Cantor Shoshi Levin-Goldberg, and Rabbi Ariana Kaptauber, to please rise and step forward to convene our Beit Din.
Cornelia, I'll start us off by sharing two short blessings from two great rabbis. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "Now, what qualifies a person to be a rabbi? What gives her the right, the privilege to represent the word of God to the people of God? If the main purpose of being a rabbi is to bring people closer to their God in heaven, then one of a rabbi's supreme tasks is to pray and to teach others how to pray. To attain such sensitivity, she must commune with the great masters of the past and learn how to pour her own dreams and anxieties into the well of prayer." And Rabbi B'nai Lappi said, "Do not measure your success in numbers. Your impact will be in how your Balabatim live their lives differently, not in whether they show up to services or this or that program. Most of your successes you will never even see or be aware of, but you should never forget that they are there, always, beneath the surface. You do not need to be an expert at everything you are called to do. The day is short and the task is great, but never ever despair and always have hope. If you do, you will inspire hope in others."
Can I take my mask off? Okay. Hi, I'm Rabbi Ariana Kaptauber. So excited to be here. Cornelia, gonna get teary. My dear friend and wise rabbi, your Torah is so thoughtful and gentle and probing and deep. In the years since our ordination, I still often think of your senior sermon about Isaac, a prime example of your unique and unexpected perspective on Torah. In your sermon, you brought dignity to our patriarch, so often disparaged as weak or unseeing, by pointing out that the Torah attaches to him more than any other character the root aleph, he, vet, the Hebrew word for love. While the rest of us breeze by this repetition and overlook this loving quality in Isaac, your discerning eye did not. And so in your reading, you taught me something precious about Isaac and about love. Not that this was surprising, as throughout our time learning together, I often looked to you for your unique and poignant observations for insight into both the text we were learning and the life we were living. Cornelia, may you continue to use your discerning eye to lift up those people and those passages of Torah which other people overlook. May this act of seeing and appreciating others bring you, in turn, the blessing of being seen, appreciated, and loved by those around you in your congregation and in your life.
Before I learned pretty much anything about Rabbi Dalton's hobbies, her love of furry things, tea, yoga, I learned that she loved Psalms. So I want to offer you a verse from Psalms. Remember your compassion, Adonai, and your love, for they are timeless. Cornelia, may you always remember that God's love and compassion are accompanying you on every step of your journey. May you always remember that the compassion and love that you share as a rabbi and teacher are blessings to the people who receive them. May you always remember that you are surrounded by the love and compassion of people who want to return yours back to you. Cornelia, your compassion and your love are timeless. Ashreinu matov chakenu. How lucky are we that you are a rabbi.
Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors, source of all blessing, we pray that the assistant rabbi of this congregation shall lead it with the blessing of your spirit. Grant Rabbi Dalton a wise heart, candor in speech, the courage to act decisively, and the strength to respond to every challenge with dignity. Give her a full measure of your compassion, that she may be the instrument of your ancient promise. I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who shall nurture you with knowledge and understanding. And let us say, Amen.
I want to begin with gratitude to the installation committee, the Aranos and the Zaytuns, to Jose Luis and Patty and their staffs, to our security sitting outside, to David, the office staff and communications team, to our teachers in the religious school and the ECC, to the officers and the COVID task force for going above and beyond to make sure that this day happened, to Jeff, Rabbi Arnowitz, and Ethan, Cantor Goldberg, to Rachel, Rabbi Isaacs, and to the members of this beautiful Beitin, which just took place. To all of you for coming today, and for those of you joining on the live stream from all over, from Texas to California to Israel, my sweet nephew and niece joining in Maryland with my sister and brother-in-law. It means a great deal to me to know that you are here, to see you here, and to know the effort that it took for you to get here, and I am so touched that we are able to do this together. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Our Parsha this week begins with the words, Vayikra el Moshe, God called to Moses, Vayidaber Adonai elav, and God spoke to him. The tabernacle is finished, and God has taken God's place inside it. All of the work that was described in the Parshiot leading up to this point has been done. It's complete. And God has something to say, uniquely, the tradition tells us, to Moshe. Only Moses hears this call. The Or HaChaim comments on this moment and points out that it is one of 3 times that God calls to Moses in this way with this language. First, the astonishing call at the burning bush. Second, the overwhelming call at Sinai. And finally, this call from the tent of meeting. What, the Or HaChaim asks, do these moments have to do with each other? I'll leave his response for another time and share with you my own. What do they have to do with each other? Each of these calls offers a model of encounter that point us all, ordinary people, towards God in different ways. The call at the burning bush serves as a model for opening, for beginning, for starting again with God and for the first time with community. It is, at times, astonishing to do so, terrifying, an exercise in finding and losing faith, of uncertainty and trepidation, to be near a fire that burns but does not consume itself. The call at Sinai, my experience of learning this work at this time, in this hour, has at certain times, at certain moments, been overwhelming. The height and width, the breadth and depth of suffering and loss and loneliness. And it has also been holy, filled with love and meaning and joy. It has surprised me again and again how beautiful it is to be a part of this community, how lucky and privileged I feel to be able to learn with you, to get to know you, to walk with you in moments that are beautiful and wonderful and also heartbreaking. As far as Sinai moments go, I'm glad to be with you. Which leads us to this moment, the moment before this moment, where Moshe is standing, waiting, the rabbis say, to be invited into the cloud of glory to speak with God. Why is he waiting, they ask? Hasn't he been speaking with God this whole time, sometimes in the very cloud of glory described here? Why doesn't he just go in? In Midrash Hagadol, Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina suggests that it's a question of kavod, of honor. Moses feels like, look, they just made this holy place with all these excruciating details for God to dwell, God, literally God, and now he's going to walk in and get his feet all over it, so to speak. The Midrash teaches Moses accorded honor to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence, and did not enter until he was summoned inside. How did he enter? The Talmud in Yoma says that God had to take hold of Moses. I imagine God taking Moses by the scruff of his neck and brings him into the cloud, into loving relationship. Part of the work, I think, part of the task of rabbis and of healthy communities is to pick us all up by the scruff of the neck and bring us into the loving light of God, the enveloping presence of divine glory. We forget sometimes that we are in relationship that is not static, that we are made from love and we go back to love, that we can go back there anytime we choose. We can enter that presence. Sefer Vayikra, that we begin this week, comes to tell us how to walk that path and how to get closer and closer to that holiness. In his book of Hours, Love Poems to God, the poet Rilke writes, God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. Flare up like flame and make big shadows I can move in. Flare up like flame and make big shadows I can move in. It is not hard to imagine this as a description of encounters with God, with the divine. We, every day, are sent out beyond what we think is possible, to the limits of our own longing, to show the world what it looks like, not to shrink, but to grow, to build, and to make shadows for God to move in, perhaps surreptitiously. My blessing for all of us today, in the days and weeks to come, is that may we all bring a greater light with us into the world, and may it illuminate our work together as community. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, Yesh Koach. Now my great pleasure to call upon the president of our congregation, Seth Schaffler, who's going to share some words on behalf of the congregation. I just might say that as Rabbi Dalton and I have both experienced, Seth has been more than just a president of the congregation, as most of you know, but also a partner in leading the congregation in prayer on the high holidays, often on other holidays, and a tremendous resource for us. So we thank you as we invite you to share some words on behalf of the congregation.
Rabbi Dalton, on behalf of the congregation, It is my high honor to be the first to officially welcome you, only a year and a half late, as Assistant Rabbi of Westchester Jewish Center. Brucha Haba'ah. To say that your tenure at WJC so far has been a rabbinic roller coaster would be an understatement. We hired you with one set of job expectations, and you had to immediately pivot to another. Could not have been easy, but you handled the challenges with grace and never once complained about the cards you were dealt. For our part, I think someone up there was looking out for us when we were lucky enough to find you as our assistant rabbi. In everything you do, your seriousness, beautiful spirit, incisive mind, gift of expression, kindness, and love of Judaism and Torah shine through. I particularly admire the way you're able to weave poetry, art, and Jewish spiritual teaching, some of which you saw this morning, together to create divrei Torah that are themselves works of art. And you do it with a beautiful, weighty, and holy rabbinic presence that elevates the listener and brings us all closer to the Torah. Not only WJC, but the entire Jewish people are fortunate to have you as a spiritual presence in our midst. The following text is a text that Rabbi Dalton suggested that I read. It comes from the rabbinic manual. And she said, I don't have to do it. You know, we just made up this ceremony over the last 10 to 20 years, all of which is true. But I think it's very appropriate. It's from the book of Joshua, and it is essentially the installation of Joshua after the passing of Moses. And I also, kind of flipping through the Chumash, waiting for my turn, noticed that it's the Haftorah for Simcha Torah. And the reason I think for that is because what it's saying is that the cycle of reading of the Torah continues and continues and continues from one generation to the next. And you are our continuation of Torah. And so I read to you this passage. Lo yamush sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha v'higadeta bo yomam v'layla Laman tishmor la'asot kechol hakatuv bo, ki az tatzliach et rachecha va'az taskil, halot tziviticha chazak ve'ematz, al ta'arotz ve'al teichat, ki imcha Adonai Elohecha b'chol asher telech. Let not this book of Torah cease from your lips, but recite it day and night, so that you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. Only then will you prosper in your undertakings, and only then will you be successful. I charge you, be strong and resolute. Proceed with courage and confidence, for Adonai your God is with you wherever you go. Chazak u'baruch. May you be strong and continue to be a blessing to all around you.
And we invite Corey Seelenfreund and Nessa Cutler to the beam with the cantor as they will close with some appropriate songs. What's that? And kids also who are here, if you'd like to come up and sing with us, or ones who are in childcare, now is the time to do that.
I don't know. Okay. Should we just do it? Let's do it. Ose shalom bimroma aleinu ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru
All right, friends, we're going to close out with a little more music and get up, simcha dance your way out of here. We are going to the activity center where there is a amazing feast set up. Want to thank again the Zaytuns and the Aronows for chairing and setting up everything and helping. Wish everyone a mazel tov. As we go to the activity center, just a reminder that for today, our mask policy is that unless we are sitting and eating, ask you to keep the masks on, and wish you a mazel tov.
Simmen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, yehelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Simman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simman tov, simman tov, mazel tov, mazel, simman tov, simman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simman tov, yehelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Atishvi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Agiladi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Shvi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Agiladi, B'meirayahu Elenu, Mashiach ben David, B'meirayahu Elenu, Mashiach ben David, The people dancing are going to get food first.